Hello, everyone, and welcome on into One Soccer. Today here on OneSoccer.ca, Annie Petrillo, Oliver Platt, Gareth Wheeler, the three amigos here, sometimes known as the Three Stooges. But you know what? We like each other, we get along, and we're ready to make some great content here in the world of footy. And in particular, guys, so excited. York United revealed their new owners. They were at a press conference yesterday. It was announced about a week or so ago that York United had fallen under new ownership, and that would be Eduardo, Ricardo, and Mikel Pascal. I'm going to really love saying their names moving forward. So they represent Game Plan Sports Group. They're out of Mexico. They're a family that has footy in their blood. One of their grandfathers actually played in Liga MX. Both of their grandfathers have been involved in the game in some capacity. Their dad was even general secretary of the Mexican Soccer Federation. So this is a family that loves the game. And now they're investing in the Canadian game. So they had their press conference yesterday. They were unveiled to the media. They were asked about a venue, and they said, well, they thanked, York University for everything they've been able to do. They've acknowledged they need that, gentlemen. They've been asked about player personnel. They want to invest in young Canadian talent. And they also talked about the possibility of playing Mexican teams and MLS teams. So maybe we'll start off from there and elaborate a little bit more from that. Ollie, who was at the press conference, tell me a little bit more about what you thought.
My biggest takeaway, to be honest with you, was just that they seem to be all in, which is a great sign. In terms of the details, there's obviously plenty to talk about, which we can get to over time. They're not going to come in with I don't think an exact idea in terms of a new stadium straight away. You have to get on the ground and figure that stuff out. And the same thing with the roster and all of these different aspects that I'm sure people want to ask about. But the most important box for them to check for me was just that they're committed, right? That they're not going to be kind of absentee owners just putting some money in and then kind of letting someone else run it from afar. All three of these brothers are moving to Toronto next year. They said they've put their own investment in this club, and they're here to run the club fully and properly. And that for me was refreshing to hear, and a huge step in the right direction for York United, where it's sometimes felt as if there's been a lack of kind of that care taken over the club, that accountability at the top in terms of who's running the club and who's making the big decisions. So that for me was what I wanted to hear personally. I think a lot of York United fans will have wanted to hear as well, is that they're going to have ownership that is not just putting their own money into the club, but it's taking up senior leadership roles in the club, is going to live in Toronto, and they're going to put everything into this. So that for me was exciting and hopefully promising for the future of this team.
I was up at the press conference as well, Andy. Just saying.
I'm not trying to leave you out, my friend.
I just was saying.
How did it feel being back on university grounds?
I went streaking. That was a little cold. I was fully clothed, by the way, they just seem like genuine good guys. Like they seem like really likable individuals. They're not just invested. Like it's sweat equity as well. Like they're uprooting their lives to relocate to Toronto to be all in. They're already talking to us about next week's U Sports draft. Like these guys were watching games on One Soccer last season, having viewing parties with their friends and family. And a lot of their friends and family made the trip up. They've yet to move up here, but they made the trip up for the press conference. It had a real family feel to it. There was genuine enthusiasm. Like I said, initial impressions, like great people as well. And they made sure that they stated it. Like they think there's a lot more room for growth of the Canadian game, Canadian players, Canadian talent on and off the field. And that's what their focus is, trying to make sure that they're part of the growth project here. And look, I think we're short on a lot of the specifics, but that's okay. They just took over the club. It's going to have to be built brick by brick, taken step by step. I do think there's a qualitative advantage of the fact that they have people at the league office just down the road, located in the same city, in order to help kind of navigate some of the intricacies of the Canadian landscape. But overall, I came out of it really enthused. I think it's this kind of ownership group and that enthusiasm and that kind of local feel that's going to speak to people in this market. And hopefully, that comes to fruition as well.
Well, I just want you to know I am a York University alum, and I didn't want to steal the spotlight. If I showed up yesterday, everyone would want to come say hi and shake my hand and take some selfies. So I'm like, I'm just going to stay away from York University, where I dominated.
More like
for
you're
years there.
kicked out and kicked off campus and not allowed back on.
They're like, thank God she's graduating. Get out. Here we go. We're done. But something that we saw, gentlemen, when Atletico Ottawa came on in with those connections to Atletico Madrid, is they had their training camp out in Spain. We know that, like, there were benefits to that kind of connection. So obviously with this connection to Mexico, and quite frankly, they flat out said yesterday, they want to see this team play Mexican sides. They want to see their team play MLS clubs. I mean, is this something you'd like to see a little bit more of, Ollie? And I would assume that they're talking more like in preseason and training and just gaining that type of experience.
Yeah, I think connections like that always help. Obviously, the opportunity to go somewhere else a bit warmer during winter for preseason, that is obviously helpful, as it has been for Atletico Ottawa. But what I would also say is that, they're asked a few questions about kind of the Mexican links preseason, bringing in Mexican players, things like that. I didn't get the impression they were all that interested in doing that. Like, the focus was very much on young Canadians. Like, that is what we're here for, is to develop local players and give the club that kind of identity. So in that sense, like I said, I'm sure there'll be some benefits of the connections they have and their family history, obviously, in Mexico. But it didn't sound like it was going to be a big focus that you're going to expect to see York United have 6 or 7 Mexican players next season. I don't think that they're fussy on that front in terms of the international players. And the focus was definitely on, York United in this community and the Canadian players that they want to bring through, which was good to hear.
That was my takeaway as well. This might be like step 3 or 4 or 5 down the road. I mean, there's a lot of work to do before we get to that point. But what I am excited about, I think that Atletico Ottawa has brought a kind of a different vantage point on how to run a club or how to develop a league, like in terms of the Spanish influence, like the Mexican market. I mean, these individuals, they have the background of very much being part of a soccer culture, a soccer infrastructure that is sustainable, that's been around for a long time. And that's still something that we're searching for here, is more ideas, different ways. And I think that that's kind of the knock-on effect, and that could really help. And I'd open the door to, French league teams or English league teams. Like, the more diversity, like, that's what this country's all about, right? Diversification of ideas and it coming together and building something even bigger and better. And that's where I hope that things go from there. And I think that that's more poignant right now.
Yeah, and I think if anything, when you talk about the benefit to Canadian players, is the ability for them maybe to make a leap elsewhere, or at least get that training and at least get that experience and that type of exposure. Because if I'm just going to point out a little bit of the elephant in the room, I think a lot of people, and if you guys want to comment on this, right, Ollie, like, a lot of people, they get a little bit concerned if you have some foreign ownership coming on in. Does that suddenly mean that Canadians won't be invested in? Now, we know the CPL has rules in place, the amount of minutes that U21 players have to play, the amount of Canadians on a field at a time, and especially with the Canadian Championship, you have to field a certain amount of Canadian players. It's called the Canadian Championship. But where are you with that type of belief that even the CPL, with the amount of foreign investment, like, it's still very much Canadian focused?
Yeah, I mean, the CPL is built for that. It's impossible not to be, right? Like, 16 of your roster spots have to be Canadian. You have to play under 21 players. And I actually think, far from being kind of a burden, I think a lot of the people who are potentially looking at this league or have come into this league see that as kind of the appeal. They see an untapped country in terms of the talent level, and a rising country when you look at what our national teams have been doing, and particularly the ascent of the men's team over the past few years. I think that's part of the attraction of coming to Canada, is that there's maybe this feeling that they're just starting to tap into the potential that's there. So again, that was certainly the impression I got from them yesterday, was that young Canadians was really at the forefront of what they want to do.
And you're coming in, if you're a new ownership group, at a price point that makes sense, and you understand that you're building something, and it's not an old boys club per se, like things are with a lot of club football across the world. My other main takeaway from the day, there was York United staff in attendance. Max Ferrari, Vroom Vroom, was there as well. There must be just such relief that the ownership situation is being settled, and then you have new owners who are all into the project, not absentee owners, not owners who are delegating from afar, but people that are going to hold individuals accountable, people that are going to be part of the decision-making process. Like, these individuals, like, I kind of feel like this is going to be a little bit of a toy for them that they're going to care about and try to nurture and grow and build. And you could see the relief amongst York United employees. Like, the last period of time has not been an easy one for the club. So having that kind of certainty and understanding, whenever new people come in, there might be other changes that are going to be made, but you know that it's going to progress in a positive way. And that's all that anyone can ask for, is a little bit of clarity and direction. And finally, the club has that. So I'm excited to see where they go from here.
Yeah, one step done. Obviously, there's a lot of other stabilizing that needs to be done. We know that they don't even really have like a permanent training facility. They kind of bounce around. So you know that they'd want that. But based on this alone, Ollie, again, with these investors, and clearly everything that we've laid out, they're not just investing from afar. It's like you've got this true ownership group that seems to really believe in the product. If you're a player now in the CPL, has York become a little bit more appealing to want to play there, have that be a destination?
Maybe, yeah. I think it's always been quite appealing, to be honest, even when it hasn't necessarily been, you've had the sense it's not necessarily been the best run club, like Zator, Ensa, Gagnon Laporet, Petrasso. Like, these are all big free agents at the time that decided to go from one CPL club to York United. That was where, in terms of the team next season, there were some big claims made. I believe it was Ricardo who said that he thinks they have the best roster in the league. They talked about wanting to make it a lot less easy for Forge and Bobby Smyrniotis to dominate this league, and particularly, obviously, Southern Ontario. So there was clearly some ambition there, and I think there is a decent starting point for York to build on. They're a playoff team last season, and hopefully now just the difference you see is some of the off-field day-to-day stuff is just that little bit better in a way that I think has been lacking for York and has maybe affected kind of mentality and culture and that type of thing over the past few seasons, and been a challenge for coaches to deal with. So you would hope good things are ahead for this team. There's all the potential there to succeed in the CPL.
Yeah, take away off-field issues and unknowns and people looking around and questioning what's going on around them. That sort of stability can have a knock-on effect on the field as well. Talent has been an issue, maybe balancing the team, and maybe some of the international acquisitions have been more of an issue. But if you're going to cultivate, and try to really embrace young players growing up and looking to play professionally around the GTA, I mean, it's the perfect place. I think more of a concern is just how to get that stadium situation figured out, how to embrace the fan culture, how to provide a legitimate alternative to Toronto FC in this market. That's exactly what Vancouver FC is trying to do with the Vancouver Whitecaps as well. Maybe a little bit more affordable, maybe, an identity that's more specific to a local community. There's things that you can do to make this a better product and provide competition in the marketplace. So let's see how it all plays out. But honestly, Andy, like, after what they've been through over the last little bit, like, yesterday was a breath of fresh air. And I think that there's a lot of positivity now moving forward.
Really was. So look forward to that new ownership group. I know it's such a relief for a lot of York United fans that they have that stability. Now let's see, they have an off season to kind of get a lot of ducks in order as we move ahead with York United.
Quack, quack.
Yes.